right, thank you, everybody. My name's Tom, and we've got Bill with us today. And today we're going to be talking about technical debt in Salesforce and how to remove it. We said for a transition to Lightning, and that's certainly a big use case that we see out there. People still trying to get the Lightning in Salesforce, but they've got a lot of technical debt that's kind of a barrier in the way. But this is really going to be relevant today to a lot of scenarios where you might have technical debt in your org. It may be that you're going through an optimization phase where you'd like to, get rid of that technical debt. Maybe you're doing an org merge or an org split, and you'd like to get the technical debt out of the way before those things move on to their new destination. We have tools that really comprehensively attack technical debt in a comprehensive way, and we're going to give you a highlight on those today. So just a real quick look at our products. What we're going to be mainly looking at today is the far right column there, Snapshot. We have a lot of great modules that all roll up into our suite. We have, of course, the Technical Debt Center, those tools that we're going to be looking at today to deeply analyze technical debt. We have our Documentation Center, so probably the deepest documentation tools for Salesforce. And when we talk about documentation, we're talking about configuration, metadata. So things like data dictionaries or documenting your flows, your queues, your roles, your sharing rules, your workflows, documenting all that process in your org. We have great tools for managing Salesforce security. We have a matrix-based approach where we map security into a matrix so you can track down for any profile, permission set, or group what the setting is. And then we can combine those to look at security by user access security. And then we can do things like intelligently merge profiles or permission sets. So if you're looking to document, manage, understand security, we have great tools there. We also have great relational data migration tools. So if you are doing something like an org clone or an org split, we definitely have tools to help you there. We do things that move data relationally. So unlike a data loader, all those relationships, those child-parent relationships, move together intact to your org. And we can do things like field mapping, data scrambling, creating IDs for matching, all the things you need to do to seed sandboxes, move data around for org splits or clones, that kind of stuff. And lastly, we have a great set of metadata deployment tools as well that are really targeted for admins and consultants or whoever's managing a Salesforce implementation to make it easy to get metadata moved around as well. So we kind of do all of that from one tool, from one user interface in our Snapshot suite. And again, today, we're really going to get a great look at the technical debt side of the tool. So just really quickly to hit on that, we attack technical debt in a very comprehensive way. And I think I'll boldly say deeper than any other tool really does. We cover all the basics like field and picklist usage, but then we really went down sort of the rat hole of finding an algorithm for a lot of the different metadata types that can accumulate as technical debt. So for almost all of that metadata, we have an analysis to show you where the unused stuff is. So whether it's groups, queues, roles, Apex, email templates, reports, dashboards, you name it, we have an analysis for it. And so we even attack technical debt from maybe a few ways that aren't considered traditionally technical debt, but really are. One would be inactive user cleanup. Somebody becomes inactive in Salesforce, they could still be the running user for workflows or email alerts, so they could be team members or group members. They can have data, open cases or opportunities. We can map that from one user to another. So really cleaning up a lot of that debt in terms of things that are connected to your inactive users and other non-traditional things like looking at poorly assigned licenses. We had a customer that had thousands of dollars of package licenses that were assigned to inactive users. So what you're really going to see Bill's going to take us through today is sort of the multi-angled approach that we really comprehensively address technical debt in a Salesforce org. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Bill here, who's going to drive and walk us through it. So Bill, off to you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. So I'm here at the Metazoa headquarters in Los Gatos, and this is a really cool building. We're right on Main Street. And it's been here for 150 years. And it kind of makes me think about time when we're here working on software. I guess Salesforce has been around for more than 20 years. And some of the oldest orgs have been around for more than 10 years now. And, over time, that's really when technical debt can pile up with all of those complex business requirements and customizations that have been added to the org. And, I think in the beginning, there were lots of great ways to customize your org and to add business requirements. There's, Apex classes and scripting wasn't introduced, clicks instead of code, flows, and all of these great technologies to help you very rapidly customize and create business requirements in Salesforce. But as time goes on, admins come and go and companies merge and divide. And sometimes people become admins that maybe shouldn't really be admins. And a lot of things get added to the org. And the truth is, if your org is getting more customizations and more complexity every day, then eventually it's going to become unusable. So let's look at some of the impacts of technical debt. And these are things you may recognize in orgs that you've worked on or situations that you've had. One is slower performance and reduced agility. I saw an org where they had so many user roles and they kept changing the connections between their user roles. And that kept triggering recalculation of all the sharing rules. And it really was an agility problem. And you can end up with more employees required to maintain the org. And so, one big issue with technical debt is the cost of owning Salesforce. And that's a big thing Snapshot really tries to address, is how can we control and reduce the cost of maintaining, sometimes it's one org, sometimes it's multiple orgs. And so that's a really important issue. And of course, it can affect sales due to outages and deliveries and delay new projects and so on and so forth. You can have data quality problems and, additional time required to update the org. So, a big issue here is not just also technical debt, but also the ability to visualize the complexity of an org so that you're confident to make changes in it. Give you an example, a new admin a lot of times inherits an org and they just have no idea what it does. And so, there's one thing you can do is you can go through every step of the setup menu and go look at everything, but that's not really very practical. So we can really help in a situation like that with our compliance reporting and documentation capabilities. You can run reports that really lay bare all of that complexity and make it all make sense. And then you start to see what's good and what's bad. So here's kind of the way I see it, is that in the beginning, your org is pristine. It has no customizations, no business requirements, and you can add all this stuff to it, everything you need to add. And then, multiple admins are doing it, and then overtime and all these other things happen. And one day you wake up, 7, 8, 10 years later, and you've lost the agility with that org, and you've got a technical debt problem. You've got a problem even just understanding what the org does at this point. And so the truth is, you can clean up the technical debt and bring it back like this, but really the truth is, and what I want to talk about at the end of this is that through the release management process, as you add stuff over here with DevOps and customizations, you need to start removing stuff over here. And as you move through time, you end up with the right business process, the right, your org's handling the things that your company needs it to handle, but you're deprecating and removing the old things that don't need to be there anymore. So Snapshot has an entire suite of tools for tackling technical debt. I'm going to show you some of those today. And, field and picklist usage is really important. I want to show you the forgotten assets report is just absolutely critical. And we've made some nice improvements to the last activity date report. It's kind of up to snuff now. We've got great applications for analyzing Apex code and Apex coverage. And lastly, Tom mentioned user connection cleanup and license expense management as well. And then I want to show you some other things we do that are actually extremely relevant. So if you think about it, security, documentation, optimization, they're all really related. They're all kind of different sides of the same issue. And then if things in kind of the most extreme case, we can help you with org splits and clones. And so we had a whole webinar on that just a month ago. I'm not going to go into all the details of that again, but in the most extreme case, you can actually reboot an org, or sometimes the way to get rid of a lot of the complexity in an org is to split it apart. And so we'll talk about that a little bit too. Okay, so I'm going to move to a live demo and show you Snapshot. This is our Snapshot product, and you can create these snapshots like this and connect them to any Salesforce org. If you double click them, you'll see the org it's connected to, and you can take a snapshot. And once you've taken a snapshot of your org, basically everything starts to come into place with the product. And if you right click one of these snapshot items, you'll see all of our documentation tools are here, and all of our optimization tools are here, and all the security tools are here. And so those are the three big parts that Tom talked about in the introduction: is optimization, security, and documentation. And so then you can run all of these reports and get to all of these interfaces as well. And then if you connect any of these items with an arrow like this, then you can also right click the arrow and you see all of the deployment tools, including continuous integration and all of that. The data migration tools are all available here. And so those are really tools that can help you re-architect an org. And so, sometimes, in a technical debt situation, you need to merge a lot of capabilities, or you need to divide a lot of capabilities, and you get into really massive org re-architecture. We talked about that quite a bit in the previous webinar, not so much today. So I want to start with showing you, so most of what we're going to do today is going to be under the optimization menu. And I want to show you, first of all, the forgotten assets report. So this is really, this report leverages years of research on dependencies. And so let me just explain that a little bit, because that'll help. There's about 220 different metadata types. And those metadata types are connected to each other in about 1,200 different ways. And figuring out how they're all connected and all of those dependencies has really been an important part of our research at Metazoa. And what's good about it is, I'll show you the impact analysis report later, which is really good. But what's good about it for this report is you can look at things that are not connected, not installed, disabled, not referenced in the org. And that is a huge source of technical debt. And you see all these different metadata types going down the left-hand side. We have a different algorithm for each one of those to determine if it's in use. So looking at Apex classes, it turns out there's about 20 ways to invoke an Apex class. And it's everything from Apex pages to triggers to flows, different ways that you can call an Apex class. Of course, Apex classes can call each other as well. And so what we do with Apex classes is we look at all those 20 ways, and then we figure out, hey, there's no way this particular Apex class can be invoked. And if nobody can call it, it's just dead weight, and you need to go look at it. So if you look over here to the right, you will see that some of these Apex classes are not referenced by anything, and others are referenced by pages or triggers or email service functions or all kinds of different things. So this is really, shows you the algorithm we have to find unused Apex is really critical too, because there's a limit in how much Apex you can have. And as you write more and more and more Apex, you can get to the point where you're up against the limit and you can't write anymore. So you need to get rid of the old Apex classes, and also just for security and for maintaining an orderly org. Let's look at custom objects. So as you can see with my custom objects here, most of my objects are referenced by all kinds of stuff, and there's probably 50 to 70 different ways that a custom object can be referenced in your Salesforce org. And they're all down there. That green stuff is all the different ways you could reference a custom object. But up here at the top, you see there's a couple of custom objects that are not being referenced. So what's up with that? It might be okay, but it's pretty suspicious. So that would definitely be something that you would want to look into. Let's look, for example, at groups. So groups go all the way back to the beginning of Salesforce. And you see here, they're referenced by delegate groups, by other sharing rules, by email templates. Groups can reference each other. But I've got 4 groups here that aren't referenced by anything. What's up with that? And so, that's another thing to go investigate. So the way you can use this report is you can check any of these metadata types over here at left. And then all the ones you check, you can preview the report very quickly just by clicking here. Here's custom tabs. But if you go to display report, it will show you all of the things you've checked. And so then here we have our Apex classes, custom objects, and the groups, all in one big report. And then you can right click that and export it in all kinds of beautiful formats: CSV, PDF, HTML, Excel, native Excel spreadsheets. It has your corporate logo on it. It has all the information about who made the report, when it was made, what the org was. And then that report is, a great thing for auditors, for development teams, for just discovering technical debt. And so we not only have reports, we also have dashboards. So you can click the dashboards button. This one's pretty sparse, but if you selected a whole bunch of different assets, you'd see a huge report on all the dashboards, and you can then export your dashboards as a bunch of different graphic formats as well. So that's all really, really helpful. And then want to show you this. Here we have a smart deploy button. So you're going to see that a lot in our product, and I want to show you what that does. But so what you've done here is we've now decided, some of these assets look like they may be technical debt candidates. And you can then look at these red areas and see these assets. Well, what Smart Deploy does is it opens up our deployment tools. And we have a really nice free-form deployment tools for administrative changes, for re-architecting an org. It's not a DevOps thing. It's not for developers to merge code and put it on GitHub. This is for making changes to orgs. And as you see over here in my delete list, here's all the items that were in red. And if you go to the deploy, you can try to deploy them and try to delete them and say, but check for errors without making changes. Or you can roll back changes if there is an error, but you can actually delete them from this interface. And if it's a sandbox, maybe that's what you want to do, or a dev org or something, you're just trying to find out what the deal is. If it's your production org, you might say, wait a second, we need to talk about this with our whole administrative team. We need to go look at each one of these resources before we delete it. There's actually a whole best practices for deleting a resource, and I'll go through that here in a minute. But what's cool is the job list over here at left it looks like it's really fancy, but it's not. It's just a text file. And so you can always go copy your job list and paste it into a text file, and you can take that file and edit it by hand, and then you can paste it back in here. And so the job list is really, really flexible. And so it's very easy to build up a job list of all these things you want to delete. And you can also the snapshot automatically saves these job lists whenever you try a deployment. So there's a whole bunch of ways to work with these job lists and then to surface that information back with your administrative team. I just want to show you one more thing though, other than Smart Deploy. And that is you can schedule all of this stuff. So this is really important. So you might say, that whenever there's a new snapshot or, at some certain date, we want to schedule this report and send it out to the administrative team as an email, save it to a folder, send it out in Chatter. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do with this stuff. But what's really interesting is you can do org monitoring. So you can set this thing up to watch your org, and when it sees a problem, then it reports it. It sends you an email. So that's a really useful thing for watching for technical debt in an org that's fairly cleaned up already. All right, so that is the forgotten assets, just core technical debt stuff. And now I want to show you field usage. So this is really key. Fields are kind of, the most referenced, most populous type of metadata asset, and you really need to try to clean them up. And so here at this first interface, you can select any object, and then you can, say how you want to select it. I've got the account object here. We can select it with a filter. We can select it with SOQL. You can get a random set of accounts, that's a statistical sample of your account. So that, if you have, say, 10 million accounts, you might, do a sample of 100,000. It's a very significant sample. This is a random sample for you. So that gives you a good idea of your technical debt without looking at all of them. Let's just look at all records. This is my test org. And as before, anything that's selected, you can preview the report. And this is going to take a second. What it's doing is it's looking through all of my fields, looking for empty values, for the how many discrete values there are. So how many different total values there are. So for example, the account object, the name of the account is almost going to be, 100% discrete. They're all unique. But the zip code might be, 30% discrete. So the discrete values is a really useful thing to look at. And here we go. I can set up all of these thresholds to show what's red, yellow, or green about how used each field is. And what this report does is it provides you a wealth of information on field usage. And so let's look at just one field. Let's look at account depth. So we can see that's a pick list. I've got about 2,500 of them. 430 of them are empty. So 2,100 of them are used, except 1,400 of them are the default value of the pick list. So is that really being used, or is that just people creating this pick list and not setting any value, just going with the default value? So you've got to make judgment calls. And then the next row, we show you all the percentages. Then we show you some really useful information, which is when that field as a metadata asset was created and last modified. So that's really useful to know. So you might say, hey, nobody's using this field, but it was just created last month. That might be the explanation for it, right? Another thing that's in all of our reports that's really nice is the link. So you can click this link. It'll take you right into Lightning Experience on that field, and you can make changes with the setup menu. So that's just a really useful thing to do. And another thing we've got is we'll show you the most popular values and least popular values for any selected item. And so like I said, this is just a test pick list with 5 different values. But if you're like looking at accounts and you see that the account, the account industry or something is not that discrete, or the name does not have that many distinct values, you can come here and kind of see what is the distribution of the most popular and the least popular values for that item. So another thing we do is, and that's editing the compliance information. And you may have seen this in Salesforce setup. Salesforce has some really nice new features to let you, as an administrator, talk about the compliance of any individual field. And so you've got the security classification, you've got the business status, you've got compliance groups and all of this stuff. And so we let you edit that right from inside the report. And so you're probably realizing by now, when we say report, we really mean an interface that lets you not only see the problem, but also fix the problem. So report might not be the right word, but it kind of fits. And then if you go over to the display tab, it'll now do a roll up of all the different objects that you've selected on the first screen and put all of that information together with a dashboard and all of that. And and you can manage your usage. So you can say, hey, this is what I think is being low. This is what I think is being high by playing with those percentages. So it's very, very customizable. And then once you get the usage set up to where you like it, then once again, Smart Deploy takes you right into the deployment tools where you can go delete those fields right now, or just save the job list, whatever you want to do. And then of course you can schedule a report, and you see every time there's a new snapshot, we're going to send a PDF of this report to the administrative team if low usage is detected, no matter what, so that's really nice. You can set this thing up to where it'll trigger and show you this low usage, put it in a report, and mail it out to the administrative staff or to whoever you want. All right, so that's field usage is really key. Its friend here is picklist usage. And so picklist usage is also really important. So if you think about it, picklists are kind of a little subpart inside of a field. And so that's what this will show you. All your picklist values broken out by record type, if you want it to look at it that way, and then show you the percentage of usage. And then it also shows you other values that are in the pick list. So, if the pick list is not restricted, then you can type all kinds of stuff in there. And that's what will happen sometimes. And then so you might find some other value that there's a bunch of them, and you're like, well, we should add that to the pick list, or it'll at least show you the problems. This is a great starting point to clean up your pick lists and to understand and document all of their values. And related to that also under documentation, fields versus page layouts, record types and pick lists, controlling versus dependent pick lists. So you can really do a deep dive on pick lists because they're kind of hard to handle. Let me show you last activity date. This is another key optimization report. So this will show you especially dashboards, email templates, and reports. And so if you go to the report for your dashboards, email templates, and reports, what you will see is a ton of information. Here's on your dashboards and your email templates and your reports, and you see how they're all color coded. And so they're color coded into, in this case, email templates that are older than 4 years, and you can set the thresholds you want. And then yellow is 2 to 4 years, and then green is when they've been used or edited in the last 2 years. So this is a really good way to discover those super old dashboards, email templates, and reports as individual records. And there's enough information in Salesforce that you can really determine that this thing has not been used recently and go knock it out or delete it. So something else we've got here, which is really interesting, notice the blue line here on dashboards, and you see we've got some other blue lines here on reports. Those are what Salesforce calls obsolete reports and dashboards. So if you change a field definition or you change a field relationship or type and it doesn't fit the report anymore, the report can't run, it becomes obsolete. And then we detect that for you. Talk about technical debt. Those things can't be run. So we detect those for you. And of course, you can go out here to your Lightning link and delete it there. You can go into our deployment tools and delete it there because of course we have Smart Deploy here as well. And the dashboards here are pretty nice. You can see, the dashboards look pretty good. There's a bunch of email templates that maybe need to be deleted, and there's a few reports that need to be deleted. Also, another thing that's new in this report is we will show you any other object. So in this case, I just have the account object, but if you find a custom object that nobody's modified in the last, you pick the time frame, but say the last 2 years or the last 4 years, that's pretty suspicious. In other words, that's an object that probably has been forgotten and abandoned. And so then you need to go look at that, go look at the impact analysis for that object and say, hey, do we need to be deleting this object? So that's another thing you can do. So we have really good coverage and optimization for Apex code quality and code coverage. And let me show you just a report. So this just shows you, this is an absolutely gargantuan report from a huge org showing you all of the code coverage in that org. So if you're looking for, an auditor, or you're looking for, a dev team, you can dive into all of these details and clean up your code coverage and make sure that all of the different problems that you can find in the code are being addressed, or at least they're being documented. And so this is just a very typical snapshot report. It's in PDF. And so, great for compliance, great for cleanup, great for documentation. All right, let's talk about user connections. It turns out that an inactive user can still remain connected to your Salesforce org in about 50 different ways. So they're kind of like zombies. You can't get rid of them. You can't delete them, and they're still connected. And so you're probably aware that the problem with the running user for a dashboard. If that user is inactive, then that dashboard can't be run. And if you go there, it'll tell you this problem. There's a whole bunch more of them. You can actually have active users reporting to inactive users. It's not just the inactive username. There's also their email address. So the email address can remain embedded in all kinds of metadata assets, and they're still getting emails. The email address doesn't know that they're inactive. They're still getting emails unless you remove them from your mail server. So, it's not just security, it's cleanup, it's everything. And there's a lot of problems trying to, change profiles and edit things in your org when you've got a bunch of inactive users that are still running the show. And so if you look at a big enterprise org, a lot of enterprise orgs have more inactive users than they have active users. Not very, very common to have 5,000 or 10,000 inactive users and 1,000 active ones. So we have a great report that deals with this, and it's user connection cleanup. And so what I've done is I've selected an active user here, and I've selected an inactive user, and you can see there's user permissions and licenses and data connections, metadata links, email addresses. These are raw email addresses, all the folder sharing stuff and team members. Those are all the different ways that users can be connected to your org. So it's interesting to see how an inactive user is connected, but it's also interesting to see how an active user is connected. So if you have a question, what is this user doing? What are they connected to? What do they have access to? What are they in charge of? You can run this report and it'll show them every connection they have to your Salesforce org. So one part of it is you can clean them up. So you can either delete the connection to the org, or you can replace it. In other cases, you have to replace it with an active user. So that's the cleanup side of it. You can also look at all the owners. So you've got a bunch of objects that are owned by inactive users. Sometimes that's good, like it's an account that's, the owner of the account is inactive because they're no longer an employee, but you don't want to change that. But other times it's bad. You've got inactive users that are, the owners of objects, and the people don't have access to them or can't see them in the role hierarchy, and so on and so forth. So to display this report, I'll show you the kind of output you can get. And so, once again, it kind of sticks with our metaphor of yellow, red, and green being the levels of how bad it is. And you can see that, for this user here, you can see, he's a delegated approver for, that the inactive user makes requests to the active approver for these delegated approver metadata assets. You see user managers. This inactive user is a manager to an active user. And this guy down here is inactive. And so all of his connections are problematic. It's everything from approval processes to analytic snapshots, escalation rules, queue emails. This user is inactive and he's all over your system. So this is a great place to clean that up. And once again, you can schedule this report, watch for this problem, and send out the reports every time that it happens. All right, moving on, looking at license expense management. So to me, this is definitely technical debt. And it's kind of, what is it? It's you've got old licenses assigned to users that are inactive, or the wrong user, or users that don't need them, so on and so forth. And what you can do is you can select up any group of users over here at left and look at all of their licenses. It's also a great way to change all of their licenses. Very quickly, you can re-architect who's got what license. Super useful. We've got some really great reports that will let you look at, you can assign money to the licenses, and then the reports will let you see what users have what licenses and how much it's costing you. And the things in red look like licenses that could be reassigned to save you money. So this is technical debt plus money. So it's kind of doubly important that you be sure that it's cleaned up and that you're not wasting money by assigning package licenses to inactive users. Salesforce is very good at telling you when you need to assign a license, not quite as good at telling you when you don't need a license. So that's another really useful report. All right, I want to talk briefly about a bunch of other stuff we've got that's really helpful for technical debt. So one thing we've got is under documentation is our impact analysis report. And this report will show you how everything is connected to everything else in your org. And so in this case, you look at a custom application. Let's look at Lightning Sales. You can view the dependencies, and you can see that Lightning Sales are connected to, this custom application is connected to all kinds of other stuff, flexi pages, custom tabs, custom objects, so on and so forth. So this is really useful for when you want to potentially delete something and you need to know, wait, before I delete this, what is it connected to? What other assets are there? So the impact analysis report is really good. It covers all 220 metadata types and all 1,200 different metadata relationships. So super deep coverage there. Also just wanted to point out something in our deployment tools that's pretty interesting. So, people always, think about deployment to deploy things, but you can also use deployments to delete things. And so that's how you clean up technical debt. And so if you look at our tools, we've got some assets we're going to delete. And one of the tricks you can do is don't actually delete it, but, just do what we call a validating deployment. See if you can delete it. And so you can select an asset with a job list and just try a deletion and say, well, if you can delete it, then there's nothing else that references it. And then that's kind of proof that it's technical debt right there. So you can figure that out. And so anyway, what Salesforce is having a moment here, but what you can do is you can then build up the assets in your delete job list to try to figure out where the different assets are that you can delete. Okay, org dictionary. Org dictionary is another really critical report. What it can do is it can document the contents of any of the metadata types. And so for the org dictionary, if you have, say you've inherited a new org, what you can do is you can go into the org dictionary and look at workflows and build up a report that then shows you what all your workflows do and how they're connected to the org, things like that. So that's a really, really critical way to do it. Let me try to cancel this. I don't know. This normally takes seconds. I don't know what's going on today. But what we saw was that, yes, we can delete this object, and then, so then you can build up the delete list and figure out the other things that are related to it. All right, I want to show you something else. In all of these reports, let me just show you here in the deployment engine again. In all of these reports, you might notice that there's these little dots over here at right. Let me tell you what those are. Those are called metadata notes. And if you click on it, you can see whatever the notes are for these objects, and you can leave them for your team, and then the dots appear. And so what's great about that is you can document things. You can document everything. And so, instead of using the descriptions, some objects have them, some objects don't, you can use metadata notes. And then when you do that, the note appears everywhere in the snapshot product. So once you add a metadata note, if it's a developer org, if it's a sandbox, if it's a production org, the note is there and it permanently documents that object by name. Very useful for technical debt cleanup as well. So last thing I want to mention is actually the security tools are also quite useful. If you look at, for example, profile and permission sets, you can go through all of your security permissions and clean them up as well. So, security is not quite technical debt, but if you've got a bunch of users that have the wrong permissions, then, pretty much that is a technical debt cleanup type of scenario. All right, I think those are most of the things I wanted to show you in the core technical debt tools we have for this. And I just have a few more comments on the slides here. So these are really the best practices for removing any asset from your org. So first you got to identify them, and then you should test what happens in a sandbox if they are deleted, but then communicate to other users, and then try restricting access to them, hide them or remove all profile access to them. See what happens. Does anybody complain or notice a problem? And then, finally, then you're ready to decommission those assets, and actually delete the metadata. All right, now I want to talk about the big picture. So I've kind of talked about how you find the problem and you can identify it. Where do you use this? How do you do this in the release cycle? So if you have an emergency where your org is becoming non-functional, you can't migrate to Lightning, you can't adopt Data Cloud, you're stuck. You need to fix this org before you go forward. That's kind of what I call deep cleaning. And so I would run all the snapshot reports on the org in a sandbox, delete all the bad stuff you find, take another snapshot, go back and look again, because sometimes when you delete one thing, now you see that that something it referred to is also not being used, and it'll find those. And so you kind of rinse and repeat that cycle. And then finally, when you're satisfied with the results, you go through some acceptance testing, and then you can migrate those changes back to production. In this case, probably removing a lot of things, not really migrating assets, but deleting the same assets in production. So that's kind of, the emergency way to handle things. And then now the other way to use all of this technology is in the release cycle. And so that's what I was talking about, where you're adding stuff over here, but you need to be deleting stuff over here. And the only way really to do that is in the release cycle. So you can take technical debt cleanup as like one of the administrative projects that you're going to do for this quarter. And you might pick some particularly, we've got a bunch of unused Apex code. Let's go clean that up this quarter. But you can run any of these reports during the release cycle. You can identify assets to remove. You can remove them from your sandbox, migrate them to production, put them through user acceptance testing, make sure it all works. Another great strategy is to package legacy applications. So if you have a legacy application that you're thinking, boy, this thing's been around forever, I'm not really sure we're using it, put it in an unmanaged package. And at least then you've identified it, and it's easy to delete, it's easy to get rid of, and you've kind of organized your org even though you didn't delete those assets. And then this is clean up the org over the release cycle, and then set up Snapshot to monitor the org for technical debt. And then the next time something bad happens, you get some of those red areas in the report, it'll send you that to your inbox or to your administrative group for whatever you need to do. And so that is, kind of, the tops of the waves for technical debt with Snapshot and trying to remove it.
Awesome, Bill. Thank you so much. So we have a few questions that have come in along the way. Just before we get there, I just wanted to say a few things. One is you can try out our snapshot tool on the App Exchange. Search for Snapshot or Metazoa, you'll find us there. We do free trials. We do training for the trials. So if you'd like to, kick the tires in your environment and make sure it's going to be a big help for you, you can definitely do that. You can see kind of all the ways to contact us. We have a couple upcoming events. We'll be at Buckeye Dreaming, Southeast Streaming, and some others later in the year as well. But those are the next two. So please check us out. One other thing I did want to mention is that we also offer technical debt cleanup as a service. So we have a very limited services team. We do org splits, clones, and merges. But we also, we'll do technical debt cleanup in an org. So while we have awesome tools for doing it, if you don't have the resources or the time or the expertise you feel to do it internally, we do have an option for you. Reach out to our sales team that you see the email for here, and we can put you in touch with our services team where we can really help you with those kind of things. All right, so a few questions. So one I have here is, do you sell the technical debt piece standalone? And the answer is yes, we do. We have our technical debt center. I think if you saw my product slide there at the beginning, we do sell that as its own piece. But, a lot of times if you have a problem with technical debt, you probably need documentation for your org or security management. And once you get to a couple of those things, it really makes sense just from a pricing standpoint to go to our full snapshot suite to kind of get all the tools that you need. A couple other questions here flying around is, can Metazoa help update the field classification? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about those new security, the business classification, security classification that Salesforce has for every field. And yeah, it's right there in the field usage report. You could just click the button, fill it out, and that saves it for that field. You can also update all that stuff through metadata deployment, and it's also all visible in the data dictionary and the org dictionary as well. It's good stuff. I wish that every metadata asset had that classification information with it. That would be really awesome.
Somebody tell Salesforce. Okay, cool. Can I remove the Apex trigger directly in Metazoa? And the answer is yes. I think Bill showed that one great way is using our smart deploy, where you could actually delete a bunch of, if you determine those Apex triggers weren't being referenced and could be cleaned up, you could do that deletion right through our tool without all the click, click, click inside of Salesforce. So yeah, definitely we do have that capability. So how would you integrate with ADO? Maybe they mean Active Directory. We support single sign-on for authentication for our tool. So if that's what you mean, we can definitely do that. So if that's not what you meant, yeah, go ahead.
Well, we can log in every way that Salesforce will let you log in.
Yeah, multi-factor, single sign-on. If that wasn't what you meant, if we missed you on that, shoot an email to the sales or support email address you see on the screen, and we'll give us some more detail, and we'll be glad to answer, if we can get there. So here's one. Are there any self-guided steps to follow when implementing this, like best practices, best places to start, low-hanging fruit to look for?
Yeah, so go to our website and go to the very bottom and look on the right. There's a big list of white papers there, and they are really pretty darn comprehensive on technical debt cleanup and release management and relational data migration and profiles and permissions and all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, some great guides there that can really help you. And also, if you're using our tools to do the cleanup, we offer full support for those and training for those tools. So we'll assign you a trainer who will work with you to kind of analyze. Everybody's situation is different in terms of maybe where their debt is or what they're trying to clean up. So, we have a lot of people with experience with the tool that can get on and really help give you some proper guidance. So we do back up these tools with a lot of great training and support that can help with those kind of questions as well. So this person says, that I think this is a follow-up to the ADO thing, thinking about pipelines for deployment. If I don't want to use Ant or Salesforce DX, will Metazoa work headless? So it could be integrated on a bash level.
Yeah, it definitely can be, you can definitely do ant type things with it. All of those pipelines that we showed you, that can all be scheduled too.
Yeah.
It's
CI or
not
scheduling.
headless though. I mean, there's still a UI, but you can run it and schedule it. So, if you don't look at it, it's headless. But we've thought about building a command line interface to the whole thing, but haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Back to the technical debt stuff. Is a trainer included in the base price for getting help or additional? And it's included. We include training and support with the licensing for our tools. So you will get a trainer that will stick with you as your sort of go-to trainer, so they know what you know as you grow with the tool and learn with the tool. So yeah, definitely. And we also offer some training for a trial as well. If you do a trial, we're happy to get on and do a training session with you, get your feet wet on a few use cases that you want to try out and let you, go kick the tires. So awesome. I think that covers it for questions right now. If there's any that you think of later, or when you get the recording and rewatch it, you come up with some, just hit up our support or sales email here. We're happy to answer any questions that we have. Be on the lookout for future webinars. We do lots of these kind of subject-based problem-solving webinars. So we'd love to see you on future ones as well. So with that, thank you, everybody. Very much appreciate your time today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye now.